Welcome everybody to episode number 2 of the CTH Podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed our first episode with Norbert Zorba. That was a very special location for us as well. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed recording it, I guess. We're kicking off our second episode now. We have a very special guest. But before we get to our guest, who's a very special guest, my co-host and our friend here, Young-hoon, he's been doing some really interesting activities in Korea. Because we all know that, Atletico Madrid, they were touring in Korea, and Young-hoon was acting as Young-hoon's a coach by nature. He's a football coach himself. But this time, he was doing interpretation for Atleti, for Luis Enrique, and for guys like that. So, very cool job. Very cool gig. So our guest for the second episode is Gonzalo Sanz Zaballos, who is a coach at the youth academy in Johor, who are the biggest club in Malaysia from what I know. I think Gonzalo would like hearing that as well, because I'm sure they've got their own rivals in Malaysia. But Gonzalo, how is it going? Just, if you want to say hello to our viewers here, now is your chance. How are you, my friend?
Thank you for having me with us. It's a big pleasure. I'm proud to be part of your of your stories and your chats. Then yes, Johor JDT, Johor Darul Tasim is the biggest club in Malaysia, and the last years we are growing a lot in Southeast Asia. We are playing the AFC Champions League. Last season we go through the first stage, and hopefully this year we get better. And also in the youth teams, we are getting more exposure in international tournaments, and lifting some trophies. And the lifting of the trophy at the end is sometimes the less important thing, but is the proof that some good things are happening.
Speaking of your work experience, you've also worked in Korea for a little bit, a little more than a year. So I wouldn't say it was a little bit, but you also have a special relationship with our friend here, Young-hoon. So tell us a little bit about that too. How did you guys meet? How did your relationship come about? Like, how did that happen?
Well, it was back in 2014, if I'm not mistaken. Then I was coaching in Valencia in the academy as well, and one of the projects came up. Then the club told me, "Hey, we are going to open an academy in South Korea permanently. You can be the head there and start to develop all the programs in there." Then I said, of course, yes, this is the chance to travel and have different experiences, which I always wanted. And then we went there, we made our first trials, and then the following month we start the regular trainings for the whole season long. And Young-hoon was there. He was one of the head coaches and was a big support because of his Spanish and his understanding of how everything works in our country, and was a beautiful bridge between both cultures to help us to settle and to understand all the players and the minds much better, and the experience was almost perfect.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Very interesting. So I'm gonna ask you, if you can give us a little bit of an introduction of yourself, to our viewers here. Where are you from? We know that you're from Spain. We know that you're from Valencia. But tell us a little bit about your background. What kind of football coach are you? And give us an introduction of yourself. So if we have that information to start the show, then I think it'll make it a lot easier for our viewers to understand our context.
Well, I played my whole life since grassroots back in Spain. And I always had this feeling like I'm not gonna make it as a professional player because of the skills I had. Then since the beginning, I started to focus more on the coaching. And when I was playing, I was always studying what the coaches I had were doing, saying, and also how were they treating people. And as soon as I could, while I was doing sports science in the university, I take the licenses and I start coaching. Then by the end of the sports science program, I had the chance to have an internship in Valencia for Valencia Football Club, and then I stayed there after 1 year. I did some of the summer camps around Europe, South America also, and then I started to coaching there. And like we said before, 1 year later, they give me the chance to come to South Korea, and we did the project in there. Then I went back. I stayed in Valencia working for the academy 1 year plus again, and then the Johor project came up, and since then I've been here. Now it's the 7th year in a row.
So your relationship with Valencia started with an internship.
Yes.
Is that right? So let me ask you this though. It seems like you have a really deep relationship with Valencia. Was that a club that you've supported when you were young too?
Yes. The thing is, in back in Spain, most of the people support either Real Madrid or Football Club Barcelona. But in some of the states like Valencia, there's there's a deep roots for the own club, and most of us in there are Valencia supporters. Then one of the good things that Valencia did many years ago was in the development of the academy, they start to mix former players, okay, with a very big knowledge of how is the methodology of the trainings, and how the things can work better, and then they start to combine some of us with some of the former players. Then this mix, I think, was very very good for the players, because we start to raise many of them to the first team, sold many of them to different parts of Europe, as you know, and I think this was and is still quite a success.
Yeah, so the reason why I ask if you've been a Valencia supporter for a long time, even before you started working for them, is because how was it for you? Because it feels pretty surreal for somebody to train to become a football coach, and then you end up working at a club that you've been supporting throughout your life. Like, what's that situation like? That's not a situation that we see often, especially in Asia or even in the U.S. So what was that whole experience like for you as a coach?
I think is back then was like a dream. No, is the my dream is to work for Valencia, right? Because when you are a kid, your family bring you to the stadium, you live all this atmosphere, which is one of the things that maybe nowadays are missing, right? There's many games on TVs, there's many games in different platforms, and the people every day is going less and less to the stadiums. Then back then was the opposite: less TV, less platforms, more on the stadium. Then I think this attendance to watch the games is what gives you this feeling to, oh, I want to be part of this.
And speaking of your coaching journey, you've studied and you've worked at Valencia, but now obviously you've been in Malaysia now for about 6 years, it seems like. So you've been working in Malaysia for as long as you've been working at Valencia, pretty much now, it seems like. So what made you sort of become committed to working at your project in Malaysia?
Well, I think the key is the growth of the project, because when we arrived, we was 1 year old only. Then we arrived with 40 to 50 kids, and only 4 years. I mean 4 different groups of age, and nowadays we are near 200, and we have all the way around. Then besides this, there's one more point, and is we had some kind of freedom to develop the ideas we had. Of course, share with some of the local staff, and trying to to combine different points. And I think the key is this growth. It's like, oh, you go back, and it's like, now we are better, now we are better, now we are better. Then I think this is one of the points that gives us here, like, we want more, because we still can do more, of course.
Right. And that's interesting because coaching, especially coaching youth football in Malaysia, out here, in Korea or anywhere outside of Malaysia, sometimes we see the clubs competing in the ACL. Sometimes, we see the national team, because obviously the national team for Malaysia is a Korean coach. So, we have a bit of an interest there as well. But in terms of youth football in Malaysia, we really don't have much information about it. So what I wanted to ask you was, when you first arrived in Malaysia and, throughout your experience, 6-year experience now over there, what's it like? The coaching youth football in Malaysia. What are some unique elements that you've experienced in Malaysia that maybe you haven't experienced in Korea or even Spain?
There was a change, because in Europe and in South Korea, at some point, everything is much more scheduled and planned. Like the academy is working in these days, the kids come, we have this program, and everything looks like is squared and squared and squared. And when we came back to Malaysia, here the competition is shorter. There were less teams. They play more carnivals, and the kids were training more like the old way we did before, for sure, in South Korea and Spain. Meaning, is on the street. The football is on the street, still on the street, because one of the things is the climate, right? The weather. Here is always summer. Then at the end, the people play in the street. Then we were back there, and we were taking some of the kids, and where are you coming from? And what do you mean, where I'm coming? No, I play in my town. It's like, oh, here we can put our hands here and start to shape all these all this talent, and it's one of the things that catch our attention very much.
Yeah, and what I wanted to ask you was, in terms of your experience at coaching at the Youth Academy at Johor, when you first arrived at the club in 2017, and looking at what Johor, in terms of the football club itself and also the Youth Academy, looking what they've become now in 2023, how much would you say has changed? And what has it been like for you to kind of experience that and go through the experience throughout 6 years?
I think everything has changed, right? Here, when we arrived, the owner of the club, TMJ, the Sultan, the Prince to the Crown of Johor, he told us, like, he had the vision to bring JDT to the front page. He wants the best for JDT in every page of the book, right? Then when we arrived, the facilities were starting to be built in some of the fields. Now we go there, and in the academy we have our dressing rooms, our gyms, our physio and treatment rooms. We have almost everything we need to make sure the kids can grow and perform. And obviously the first team is even better. We have a wonderful new stadium. We have a new office. We have the training center. All the infrastructure has been built at the same time that the club has been growing. Then is what I said. We arrive with 40 kids, and then we start to move to a different fields with better buildings, with better equipment, with more staff, and choosing our profile coaches we want to work with us. Then all these things has gone hand by hand, right? Then at the end is what I said before. In the day by day, sometimes you feel like we have this situation, and if you look behind, it's like, but 4 years ago we wish we had this situation, right? Then it's good.
So that makes me really curious, because you spoke about the improvement of the infrastructure at JDT and how much you guys have improved as a football club in terms of the environment, creating an environment for success for the club. But what I want to ask you is, you've experienced Korea, you've experienced Spain. Where would you say JDT are in terms of their infrastructure, the environment that they have for the players, young players, or what have you? How would you say that compares to maybe a smaller scale club in Spain, in La Liga, or even the Segunda Division? Like, how would you say they compare to some of the smaller scale clubs in Spain?
Face to face, or even better? Seriously.
That's what I wanted to ask, because
yes.
Obviously, history and tradition, you can't really compare that yet, because Malaysia and Spain, there's that discrepancy. But in terms of infrastructure, that's really interesting. Yeah, so if you can kind of give us a little bit more information on that, that'd be really fascinating.
If, for example, the new stadium we have for the first team is a state of the art, right? You come into the stadium, you see all the dressing rooms. The dressing rooms have everything one team needs. I tell you seriously, we have the coaches side, the player side, all the whiteboards, all the screens in there. Is what I dream. It's like it's done for the best experience, and also for the supporters and everything is kind of similar, right? It's is a new stadium that you can compare with stadiums who are at the top level in Europe, right? And and at the end, this is something that in some places in Asia and are becoming now, right? Are arriving now, and I think the whole is a pioneer on this. And if you compare what we have now in the academy for the third team, the youth teams, compared to another clubs in Europe or even Valencia, we are face to face.
That's really interesting.
Mhm.
And so at Valencia, you were also involved in what I think is a very interesting experience, and probably not might be because I don't know much about it. So I wanted to ask you, at Valencia, you were involved in the club's methodology department.
Mhm.
What does a methodology department do at a football club? Like what? Because I feel like it's relatively a new concept to a lot of us. So
Mhm.
so for somebody, it's really rare that we speak to someone who has actually been involved in those kind of tasks or work, if you can call it that. So if you can kind of explain to us the purpose and like the function of a methodology department at a football club like Valencia, that would be that I
Mhm.
think that would provide a really fascinating perspective.
Sure. The methodology departments, like the word saying method, is the way to work, right? How we want to do things. Then at the end, when we are developing players, we develop players with one purpose, and is these guys have to be the first team players in few years, right? Then Valencia Football Club and JDT, Johor, each club has some particularities. How is the history of the club? How is the kind of player profile all the supporters always liked and love to watch? How is the team doing? If they are always on top on the table fighting to win the league, or sometimes they are in the middle of the table and they have to face some challenges. Then all these kind of things are what we are trying to take care of. And from this point, we go to the beginning and we start to work with these players. Okay, then at the end, things we do with the players, we try to choose or to build a profile. Okay, how we want our players to be. They have to be very skilled. They have to be very tall. They have to be very intelligent. They have to be very communicative. It's not important if they are communicative, but they have to be strong. So in every place, these particularities will be different, right? Then we choose according to what our club wants and desires, right? And from this point, okay, we also work on the way we play. Okay, we call it like the models of game, right? How we want to play. Because if we don't work on this, what happens is the coach, for example, myself in my team, and John Hun in his team, and yourself, Steve, in your team, we will do what we like. Okay, but what we always like is not 100% what the club needs or likes. Then at the end, in the methodology department, what we try to do is guide this process, right? Okay, this is more or less the systems we are going to use. This is the kind of player we are going to use. This is how uh, we intend to face one game. How we have to press. How our teams should press. How our teams should drop or delay. How we should start building game. You know. Then all these things we put in different guidelines, in different ideas we have, and then we start to apply. And also we work a lot on the what we call the model of training. The model of training is the way we train. Then more or less goes back to the same idea. Me as a coach, I can like some kind of exercise, and I like to do the training session like this, and I like to rotate the players like this, or give this kind of feedbacks and stuff. Then what we do also is guide all of this. Then we put rules. We establish like a weekly plan. Then depending on what not only we say, of course, what the studies say about the recovery times and the efforts and the physiology of the body, the age of the player, then we start to more or less adjust. Then, okay, day number one of the week, we should train like this kind of effort, this long, this kind of exercise, this kind of participation. Okay, if the player has to be always playing or play and rest, or play more and then rest a little bit, all these kind of things. Then we go with this day by day, day by day, day by day. So at the end, what we try to do is put, the basics of of the process for the coaches. Then the coaches, they have the autonomy, of course, to decide the drills and to decide who is going to play on the weekend, but following the guidelines of the club, of what, not me, like we decide what the club decide. And I think it's very nice. It's very nice. And later during the year, especially here in Johor, what we also do is we are in charge of the analysis of the games, right? Then we emphasize a lot of the players have to watch themselves. We have to show them all the good things, the bad things also, and teach them to be realistic and objective of themselves and the team. Okay, then we are building players who we always say, right? At the end, they don't make excuses. What they have is conditions, right? What are the conditions today? This one, this one, this one. Can be a good condition or a bad condition. Okay, with this, let's play. Let's fight. Let's perform. Let's try to win. And the idea is this one, right? To develop players who are aware of all the situations, who are guided during all these years to make sure the day they reach the first team, if they reach, because not everybody can, they are more than ready to step into the field and say, here I go, I'm going to do very, very good.
So, a methodology department, the purpose of it is pretty much creating plans for the team in terms of planning for the game, in terms of planning for the training sessions, and also for individual players. It's pretty much creating plans for them to be successful. Is that sort of like the right idea in a nutshell, I guess? That's really
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah, for the players, what we do is like we we choose some behaviors, okay, and then we call like technical behaviors, which is the technique, how the ball has to be played or hit or controlled or different situations, and also we call tactical behaviors, which are the things related to the game, how we understand what is happening, and how we decide what to do, right? And these ones we split in individual and collective. Then when we start with the kids, we focus first a little bit on the technique, because at the end, when we are working to build players for the first team, and luckily we are not doing a for fun carnival or tournament, then we are choosing, right? Sometimes it's sad, I like this boy, but okay, sometimes it's sad, but at the end we have the purpose to select or to get the best ones, right? And from this point, then we go with the individual behaviors, the tactical ones. We start to explain how to solve small situations in one game, and from this point we go bigger with the whole team. And if we combine this, at the end is what I'm saying. The purpose is to make sure we have players who are 14 or 16 years old, and they are the ones who say to you, coach, I have this situation, like, what should we do, or can I do this, and give you solutions. Because one of the things that Yong-Hoon, for sure, he will remember, when we were in Korea at the beginning, we were explaining the training sessions. Okay, today we're going to do this, and here, okay, Yong-Hoon, what do you think? How we should do this? And the kids were there like, I'm shy. I was a mix between shy or I don't know how to reply. Then we were bringing them to the whiteboard. No, you explain to everyone how you have to do this, how you should do this. And they start to talk more and more. And the purpose of this was what I'm saying, no? To reach one point where the coach don't need to ask, they come and say, coach, here, this guy is doing this. How can I solve this? Or is it okay if I do this way or that way? And I think this is super nice, because you as a coach, when this happens, you have the feeling like we are doing a good job. They are autonomous. At the end, the thing is they have to go by themselves.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And this methodology department conversation, reason why I find it interesting is because I don't really see it as a common thing. Is this more of a Spanish football sort of thing? Because I don't think I've seen it around, especially at least until a couple years ago, maybe even in England or like in Korea or the US. We don't often hear about these kind of things. Is this more of a Spanish sort of developmental method, or where did this originate from?
I'm not sure where he's originally from, because maybe now I say yes, he's from Spain, and later somebody say no, he's wrong. Before you, there was one guy somewhere else. I'm not sure where to start. What I know is in Spain became quite famous like 15, 12, 10 years ago, and I think one of the reasons was because like from universities, they start to get involved in the process of teaching and in the grassroots of not only football, in many sports, and these help a lot to build these programs, like we call the long term programs, long-term player development programs. And I read these kind of programs also from Canada, from many countries. They also have from Australia. They have the programs, right? The key is if these programs are only federation issue or big clubs issue, or is in most of the places. Then I think Spain took advantage when we start to put this kind of work in most of the academies.
Like we talked about, prior to your time in Malaysia, you had a little bit of a stop in Korea too. You worked in Korea at the Valencia Academy in Korea that was there. What I wanted to ask you was coaching at the Valencia Academy in Korea, where you met Young-hoon. What was your role at the time over there, and how was your experience in Korea?
I was the representative of Valencia Football Club there. I was like the head of all the sports side, and we were head coaching teams. I remember we had different ages, right? Then if you remember, I was called Kandom Nim, Young-hoon.
감독님, sí. Yes.
Kandom Nim.
Yeah.
And and pretty much what we were doing was quite similar job, right? Schedule the trainings, prepare more or less with the coaches, the kind of training sessions we had to do, and then in the afternoons coming to the field and train and train a lot. Then, for example, I remember from Korea, one of the differences with the Spanish football was in Korea the players and the parents and the coaches, most of the people was asking for more, and then from the methodology point of view, sometimes I was there like, but you don't need more. Like, okay, you want to do something else, go to the swimming pool or go to play basketball, right? So don't focus every day in football. Go to the cinema, read a book, I don't know, but at least once a week or twice a week, you have to release your mind from football, give a break to your body, and then in 1 or 2 days you are fresh air. Also, the day number 7, right? On Sunday, hey, relax. And we were adjusting some of these. Okay, good. Let's the day you want to do some extra, we can do some individualized training skills, soft, for planning in different situations, and I think was very good because the kids we had, they were really, really good.
Yeah, and speaking of which, you mentioned the kids, and what I wanted to ask you was, what were some of your first impressions of youth football in Korea, and like how did it compare? I don't know if Spain's going to be the right comparison, but how did it compare to the first time when you arrived in Malaysia?
The Korea, what I felt is the first impression was these guys are technically amazing, because I say, no, the talent in the whole world, the talent is the same, right? If you take out all the sides and we focus only on people or on humans, the chance to be talented is the same in every place, right? Later, by different situations, if you train more or less, or you have better conditions, lower conditions, then you have more luck or chance to be there, right? Then I remember when I arrived to Korea, probably because of the intensity of the trainings from a technical point of view, I felt like, these guys are amazing. They are excellent. And later, what I felt is here, is what I said before, here we have to work on the understanding, right? On the players' decision. They have to be aware of what they are doing. Okay, then they are executing sometimes, but they don't really understand why they are choosing this. So if they understand, then they will be gold. And in Malaysia, it was a little bit different. Is like I explained here, the players come from, not always, right, but sometimes they come from their own training, or they have the coaching in the town. Then these guys, they are hard. They are hard. Like they come here and it's like, I'm ready here to do everything you ask, and the process is a little bit different in this situation. In Korea, they were like ready to learn about the tactics, but we are already so good from the technical point of view. And in Malaysia, it's like, okay, we are ready to learn everything we have, and they are hard. They have this passion of change the games because something happened. Then all these are also develop different, and the experience is like at the end is similar, but the first impression is a little bit different. It's like, oh, I can work here a little bit more, I can work there a little bit more.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, and that's something that I was kind of thinking as well, because sometimes I feel like, and a lot of people that I've spoken to involved in Korean football, we often talk about how Korean players, they don't really lack technique. And a lot of the general public, they mention how technically we're so much inferior compared to the South American players, the European players. But sometimes you look at our players and we don't often really see it that way, because the players themselves, they have good technical qualities. But what we see also in Korean footballers, a lot of them, especially the young ones, is that I feel like their technical abilities don't really translate into a 90-minute performance in a competitive football game. Does that make sense? Like, in other words, I see a lot of good talents in Korea and across Asia as well. I see a lot of good talents, but not many good players or performers in a 90-minute football context. Would you sort of agree with that after having experienced, coaching youth football in Korea and Malaysia? Is that something that you agree with, or do you kind of have different opinion on it?
It's not about agree or different opinion. It's some points to touch regarding this, right? Technically, it's amazing, yes, but later, some of them, and I think every day less and less because it's improving a lot. Later, there's no performance. Then at the end, the key is if we do this very, very good in South Korea, okay, why then the other side is missing? Then is where I think most of the South Korean coaches and most of the people like you start to do, right? You start to have discussions and see how we can help to improve the situation, right? Then one of the things that I also remember there was when we had situations or discussions, I didn't understand Korean, right? But sometimes I felt like why many people is always giving like negative feedback, right? It's like, we are not doing this good enough, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. And at the end, it's like, if we always are not good enough, at the end, we will believe we are not good enough, right? So why we don't work different? Why we don't work, hey, we do this very good, let's try this better. We do this very good, let's try this better. And at the end, we cannot cheat ourselves and think the job is done, right? But I think it's go to the point where we have to find the key to make the people more comfortable on the field. You miss one penalty, it's okay, don't worry, you will score the next one. You miss one penalty, you are not good enough to take penalties, you cannot take penalties, and then this guy at the end, if everybody says this, he will feel like I'm not good to take penalties, and maybe he just missed a penalty, Then I repeat, I think this is changing and improving, not only in South Korea, in many places, right? I think the leagues and the development every day is getting better and better everywhere, and the level of and the quality of the football that you can see in the, for example, in the youth World Cups or the youth tournaments is mind blowing. Sometimes you watch this and it's like, wow, this is 16 years old, amazing. 10 years ago, this is unthinkable.